when we think about all the art that's out there in the world, we often have our own interpretation of it. Art is very subjective. The way we might view something doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way that the rest of the world is going to view it. And one of the things that often comes into contention, I should say, is who has the right or the responsibility to indicate what a piece of art means, the creator or the audience. And this is where reader response and authorial analysis comes into play. There are two types of analysis that are often linked with one another, and that's authorial and reader response. Authorial is essentially directly connected to the author of a work, and the reader response is directly connected to you, the audience, the viewer, the listener, the watcher of said work. Oftentimes, readers will agree or disagree with an author's narrative based on their own experiences and understanding. So, essentially, starting with authorial influence, there's often the theory that when a work is created, its meaning is essentially associated with the creator, the author, the writer, the singer, the artist, and whatever they say is the meaning of the work, that is what the work means. However, there have been plenty of times when songs, movies, videos, pieces of art have been interpreted in different ways because the audience gets something different than what the essential artist intended. So when considering how an author established their character, what might have influenced a director, or how a business chose their particular strategy, analysts often consider places of origin and environment for clues. So here's a little bit more overlap, that they often say that an author is influenced by their culture, by their environment, and then through that they create their work and they create the interpretation for said work. So for example, Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, suggests that the character of Bart and Bart's hijinks is a direct manifestation of his childhood and adventures. So Matt Groening essentially created one of the most famous cartoon characters or characters of all time in Bart Simpson, and directly connects and associates his childhood to Bart's hijinks and Bart's own journey and growth. Oftentimes, an audience will give full credit to an actor, author, director, or singer who is addressing and displaying their personal history through their respective medium. So, whether it's Taylor Swift, Nirvana, Lil Wayne, each of these artists have created albums that they say is a reflection of their journey, a reflection of their life, their understanding, their perspective of the world. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that their interpretation is right or is singular, especially because many people will take what they create and they will say, well, this is what I got out of it. So oftentimes we read, listen, or view material without ever questioning or analyzing the reactions we have. Why did I find that comic funny? What aspect of that song hit an emotional chord? And how did I become so vain? In what way does a secondary or outside source analyze said topic? So, on the flip side of this, the creator of said work, whether it was a singer, a director, or a producer, what have you, might say, well, this is what this particular movie is about. But I might sit down and I might watch it and I say, I had absolutely no connection to what you were saying. I focused in on these ideas, and this is why I am interpreting this movie through this particular lens. When we analyze our reactions to certain cultural stimuli, we have to be critical and go beyond those visceral responses. Sometimes the analysis will yield nothing significant, but other times you may find that you follow certain patterns that are brought on by social cues or triggers. So essentially, the way you interpret something is often connected to the experiences you've gone through, to how you've grown up, to what you've been exposed to. Authorial analysis is based on the concept that the primary focus is author-based, meaning that everything that is integrated into a text is centered around the author's place of birth, upbringing, experiences, and environment. However, there is often conflicting criticism or analysis which can surface when modern readers debate over an authorial text from the past. Historical cross-referencing can lead to factual manipulation, and there can also be issues when readers do not necessarily trust or hold the author as credible. So, for instance, the movie American Sniper came out a few years ago, and Many people saw that, and that could be seen as one interpretation of what went down under certain circumstances during war. However, there are a variety of different interpretations, not just from American Sniper, but from a variety of different sources, from people who live there, people who have gone on their own missions, people who are snipers themselves, that might conflict with that singular point of view. So oftentimes when readers respond to authorial claims that, well, this is what an idea is about, they might contradict that and say, well, other people who were there, other people who have experienced this, have had different accounts of what is going on. So if you were going to use an authorial analysis, you might focus on the primary source being the author. So if you were going to analyze a particular author's work, a artist's work, a musician, a songwriter, then you would take their work and you would utilize their material directly, and you can quote it, you can cite it. Or combines aspect of cultural analysis in correlation to the author's culture and subculture. So oftentimes when writers will look back at a certain time period, they will look at what an author like Shakespeare might have been influenced by, the type of culture that was around him, the type of society that influenced him. When it comes to reader response, you will cross-reference secondary sources as a foundation for analytical examination. So if your job as reader response is to analyze something and say, something seems wrong about what this authorial interpretation is, let me do some research and let me cross-reference it with some things other people are saying, and establishes that secondary sources are support or disprove primary source. So one of your points of analysis might be to say, listen, this author is claiming one thing, this artist is claiming one thing through their music, but there seems to be a misinterpretation based on these other observations I'm finding. So depending on if you want to do an authorial or reader response analysis, your goal will essentially be to kind of pull things either from the author's point of view or from your own sort of culture or background to either agree or to contradict what the particular cultural artifact it is you are addressing or analyzing is trying to say. So keep that in mind if you decide to do an authorial or reader response analysis.